Every journey gets us closer to the same truth. We all need connection.
You are watching In Conversation This Week with Miceal O'Hurley.
This is Miceal O'Hurley, and you're watching another episode of In Conversation This Week with Diplomacy in Ireland, the European Diplomat. We have Chris Melzer from the UNHCR. He is doing heroic work on the border with the whole team. They are the largest humanitarian relief team in the world. Chris, how are you?
A little tired, a little depressed, because when you listen to the stories of the refugees every day, then it's hard to stay a happy person. I consider me normally a happy person, but it's really not easy.
Chris, when we first spoke in the early hours of the war, 28,000 people had crossed over at Dorohusk, I think you were at the time. What's the situation today?
Well, meanwhile, more than 1.7 million Ukrainians have fled the conflict, are in other countries. More than 1 million of them are in Poland. I guess at least 1.1 million today, probably. And there's still long lines of cars on the border crossing points. There are 8 crossing points here, and especially on the big ones like Medica, you have to wait 10, 12 hours. This is better than just a couple of days ago when we talked, because there it was 50 hours or even more. But also that 10, 12 hours, it's freezing here. It's -5, -6 degrees. Most of the refugees are women with children. And if I would imagine that to have for 12 hours, I mean, this is only the border. They are already for sometimes days on the road with small children in a car. You have no idea how and where your husband is. That must be very depressing.
Chris, I've been helping a human rights lawyer and her family try to get to the border. It's been a 3-day drive. Would have taken 15 hours maybe. They are 12 hours at the border to cross. They've just crossed over. They can't find petrol. Is that a common problem?
On the Polish side of the border, it's better now with the petrol, but yes, we have these problems. And on the other hand, here many people try to help. So what I would recommend is just to go to one of the reception centers here on all of these 8 border crossing points. There are these kinds of reception centers. They are not very cozy. This is in a gym or a school where you have cots on one after the other. So your privacy is 2 centimeters to the next one. But it is warm. There is warm food, hot drinks. There are even some toys for the children. And most important, there are a lot of people who are trying to help you, from Red Cross or nuns or Boy Scouts or something, and firefighters. So just take the solidarity and probably warm yourself up, get some sleep, and on the next day, I hope you can find petrol. This is what I would advise.
They have a 3-month-old baby. What can they expect when they get there? Will there be nappies? Will there be clothes? Or is it bare bones? Let's feed them and move them on.
No, the answer is yes. There are here plenty of things to help. I just met yesterday a woman with a 2-month-old son. Andriy was his name, is his name. And especially diapers and everything for children is here really a lot. So I saw the warehouses of the Red Cross and other relief organizations, and so there is no need with these articles.
Chris, we've talked about humanitarian aid efforts by individuals and good well-meaners. I have seen photographs that some of the aid from non-NGOs has ended up in the elements, boxes torn open, being damaged by snow, rain, cold. Um, do you have confidence that the Red Cross and the other NGOs now have sufficient streams for logistics in place to meet this ever-growing demand?
Yes, I think so. Although we will probably see another pictures. I mean, there is unfortunately always in these situations you have wasted food or wasted relief items, and this is indeed it's a pity. It's but unfortunately, so the answer could be or has to be the best possible logistic that the relief items are going to that place where they are needed. I've seen this here as well. If I've seen this in other countries, in other refugee situations, it is just a very small part of the help, but indeed we need to take care that nothing is wasted.
I'd like to invite you again. We've put up on our news site the UNHCR information to make funds available for your work. We've mentioned the Red Cross. Is there anybody else you'd like to mention in case people have donor preferences?
There are so many. There are, for example, the other church organizations like Caritas and Diakonie. They are big and small NGOs. There are some people who are trying to help without any NGO. They're just helping. Since I'm working for UNHCR, of course, I would recommend UNHCR, because if you take a look at the Ukraine, at Ukraine, and in Ukraine, there are not many relief organizations left. We are still there with our full manpower, 120 people working there, but our operation is funded just by 9%. So 9% is not the gap, 9% is what we have. Since we want to stay, since we need to stay, we are very grateful if we can receive donations for our operation there.
Well, let me just chime in there and say, from my personal experience in wars around the world, for the past 30 years, I've always found the UNHCR effective and at the front, and I appreciate all of your sacrifices, especially those in country at this time. Chris, a couple quick questions. Is the profile of the people still the same? Elderly, women, and children, or are you now seeing wounded people coming through the border?
I have not seen wounded yet. Maybe there are some. I haven't seen it. What I'm seeing every day is the typical picture is a mother with a little boy on her left arm and a girl walking on her right arm, and probably a little suitcase with them or something. This is the very typical picture. So these are not statistical figures. I have some from some table or something. This is just my what I see every day, and I would say that 95% of the refugees are women and children, and maybe the elderly. Yeah.
Chris, I don't know if you remember the other day, you've probably met thousands of people at this point. A wee child named Olina and her sister Svetlana met you, and their mother said you were the first smiling man they'd seen in days. So I hope that at least carries you through a few good moments of joy. Two last questions. Russia continues their hybrid warfare. Here in Ireland, we're starting to see social media flooded with stories of Polish people complaining that the Ukrainians are ungrateful. They're trying to make Ireland inhospitable before Ukrainians even arrive. Has that been your experience?
Actually not. What I'm seeing here is a lot of solidarity by the people, and that the Ukrainians are very grateful. Many of them coming here, and they know Poland quite well. It's the neighboring country, and many of them have relatives here. Others arriving here, and they don't know anybody. And especially these people are, of course, very grateful for the help. Of course, especially the women and who has children, and these is the majority. They are very grateful. When it comes to social media, especially in this conflict, I have learned in the last 12 days to sometimes to check and recheck.
I want to check one last story with you. And by the way, let me confirm that many Polish people that I've spoken to are exhausted from helping, but they're still glad to do so. That has been my experience.
Yes, I believe that. Yeah.
And I think Poland, their sons and daughters remember their own plight from the 1940s, and their outpouring of support has been generous, at the very least, generous. Chris, we've heard reports that foreign students within Ukraine have been denied access to the border, that Polish border guards have refused them entry. Can you give me any insights? Are you seeing people of color crossing the border? Are they being received? Do you have any insights?
Yes, we have heard these rumors the first time more than a week ago, and we investigated them immediately, because if that would be true, then that would be a breach of the 1951 Refugee Convention. So a very serious thing for us, and that's why we talked to many refugees, and there were also, I would say, maybe 30 or maybe even more who were not Ukrainians. And the majority of them had nationalities of African countries, like Sudan, like Congo, like Nigeria. And we asked them, and I would say 2/3 of them said they had absolutely no problem to enter Poland. And the other third, or maybe 40%, they had problems because they had no documents, no passport or something. And they ended up for many hours, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes even 36 hours, in a relatively small room until their identity was checked with the embassies of their home countries. We demanded from the Polish authorities to make the room bigger and to make the conditions better in this room. On the other hand, we have to say that none of them, even the people without a passport, were denied access to Poland. None of them were sent back to Ukraine, and this is a very, very important thing. And also here, so when you hear things on social media, it's sometimes interesting from where it's coming from.
That's ended up in the mainstream media too, and I think it's unfortunate. So again, I thank you for checking those stories out and advocating for every soul who's crossing the border. I know I keep saying last question, but you said small room. Is there any concern, given the traveling conditions and the hospitality facilities as they are available, that we might be looking at spikes in the coronavirus, tuberculosis, other communicable diseases that inevitably arise out of humanitarian movements of this size?
It's not easy to answer this question, I have to confess. So yes, sometimes the people are also in buses and so on. There's not much space. Most of them are wearing masks, sure, but this is not 100% protection, as everybody knows. It might be that this is the problem for the corona situation, but we have no figures or no facts yet on this. So that's why I'm sorry I can't answer the question.
And do you have medical professionals advising and available for treatment in such circumstances?
Well, not UNHCR, but here in Poland, there are NGOs who offer that. And we talked to some doctors and some paramedics and asked them what kind of conditions the refugees arrive. And they say physically actually pretty good. So if you given the fact that they are refugees right now, that they are for days on the road, and they are cold and they are hungry and they need sleep, but physically they're in good conditions. with it psychological, this is of course a totally different story, given the fact what these people had to endure.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you for your time. I know you are exhausted. And if we're going to talk about the psychological toll, I'm going to wag my finger at you and tell you to take care of yourselves. You also are exhausted and have been through stress. And as you say, the fatigue of hearing the story is hard, but I know you've done this for a long time and you do it well. And when I hear stories back of all the million people or so, 1.7 million people who have crossed the border, when I hear little Alina and Svetlana tell me that they met you and you were the only smiling male they'd seen, I knew they were in the right place. Good work, UNHCR, NGOs, and to the Polish people, and I'm sure the Romanians, Hungarians, Slovakians, a tremendous outpouring of support. Thank you for your time, Chris.
Thank you.
This is Miceal O'Hurley, and you've been watching In Conversation This Week. We have been talking with Chris Melzer of the UNHCR. Please check our links in the article, make a donation, and make a standing donation to the UNHCR. They're taking care of people all over the globe. Good night, Chris.
Good night.
$300 million years ago, there was no Africa, Asia, Americas, or Europe. Just one big supercontinent, Pangea. And today, there is still a force connecting those divided by distance, reversing millions of years of rifting. Making far feel close, bringing there to here. Turkish Airlines.